Every once in a while, a revolutionary product comes along that changes everything. Well, first of all, one's very fortunate if you get to work on just one of these in your career. Apple's been very fortunate. It's been able to introduce a few of these into the world. In 1984, we introduced the Macintosh. It didn't just change Apple, it changed the whole computer industry. In 2001, we introduced the first iPod. It didn't just change the way we all listen to music, it changed the entire music industry.
Innovation distinguishes between a leader and a follower. What kind of man was Steve Jobs? He was an innovator for sure. He was an individual in history who is most remembered for his intellectual thinking and design. Steve Jobs was born to Joanne Simpson and an Egyptian Arab father on February 24, 1955. He was later put up for adoption and was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs. Jobs spent a lot of time in his neighbor's garage, who was an employee of HP. In high school, Jobs attended HP lectures. Once he asked William Hewlett himself for parts he needed for his project. Hewlett was impressed and gave Jobs the parts and offered a summer internship at HP. After graduating college, Jobs attended Reed College in Portland, but was unsure of his future. Jobs dropped out of college after 2 years, but this only meant he could drop into the classes he wanted to take.
After 6 months, I couldn't see the value in it. I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how college was going to help me figure it out. And here I was, spending all of the money my parents had saved their entire life. So I decided to drop out and trust that it would all work out okay. It was pretty scary at the time, but looking back, it was one of the best decisions I ever made. The minute I dropped out, I could stop taking the required classes that didn't interest me and begin dropping in on the ones that looked far more interesting.
Design is not just what it looks like and feels like. Design is how it works. He met Steve Wozniak, an engineering whiz and dropout from the University of California, at his HP internship. They became friends immediately. They met again at Atari Inc., a video game company. Jobs knew how Wozniak was a much better engineer than him, but Jobs had a sense of marketing. Then he decided to ask Wozniak to go with him on his venture to make a personal computer. They both quit their jobs and they began building the PC in Jobs' family garage. They sold many of their PCs, and this was the initial beginning of Apple. They decided to call their personal computer Apple I. It was sold for $666.66. Soon, Apple created Apple II, Apple II Plus, and Apple III. But Apple's first revolutionary product was born in 1984. Apple released this advertisement on the Super Bowl XVIII, which is now considered one of the best commercials of all time.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of a contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
The Macintosh was introduced to the world in 1984. The Macintosh was the first successfully marketed PC with multiple typefaces, proportionally spaced fonts, mouse, and a graphic user interface rather than a command line interface. It was a PC to use pictures/icons to represent programs or applications. Every single operating systems manufacturer in the world copied this interface and is now the standard interface for all computers. The Macintosh was the revolutionary product in the PC industry. Jobs wanted to work on the Macintosh line even further. Jobs had different views than the other staff of his company. With diverging goals of the future, Steve Jobs was forced to resign from Apple in 1985 when the board of directors sided with John Sculley, CEO of Apple. Leaving Apple angrily, Jobs took some former Apple employees and created NeXT Inc. in 1989. There he marketed the NeXT computer, which wasn't too successful but helped in object-oriented programming, PostScript, and more. Jobs tried to revolutionize the hardware industry with NeXT Inc., but realized he already had done that with Apple. Because of NeXT Inc.'s little success, it was sold to Apple in 1997. Though NeXT Inc. was not successful, Jobs still did have success after his resignation of Apple. In 1986, Jobs co-founded Pixar Animation Studio, which today is an Academy Award-winning computer animation studio. Pixar is known for creating classic feature films such as Toy Story, Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life, Monsters Inc., and Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo became the most commercially successful Pixar film, grossing over $800 million. Pixar's first animated film was Toy Story, a huge box office hit. Monsters Inc. had the largest opening weekend ticket sales than any other animated film in history.
Let me see. 9 o'clock. 9 o'clock.
After NeXT Inc. was sold to Apple, Steve Jobs came back to Apple in 1997 and soon became the CEO of Apple. In 2001, Apple took a step further, this time in the music industry. Steve Jobs introduced the iPod to the world along with iTunes. The iPod was a portable music player or MP3 that had a sophisticated design. It had a signature circular click wheel that stood out from the other clunky, outdated MP3 players. As years passed and newer versions of the iPod were created, more and more people went crazy over the iPod. Shoppers all wanted this new device and could not wait to get their hands on it. It was the new thing, and soon later Apple started creating more and more versions of the iPod, such as the Shuffle, Video, Mini, and Nano. Most recently, Apple created the iPod Touch, that features touchscreen controls, a wide screen, and many other functions. Even today, Apple is creating newer versions of the iPod. People now buy most of their songs off of iTunes, and most people listen to iPods rather than MP3s now. The iPod and iTunes has changed the way people listen to music. Even with success with the iPod, Apple decided to go a step even further. Apple introduced iPhone in 2007, which showed Apple was going to take a dive into the phone industry. The iPhone was a slick, futuristic smartphone that had an iPod, phone, and internet browser all in one. Time magazine called it Invention of the Year in 2007 because it swept the nation with its fancy technology. Consumers went crazy for the iPhone's unique features. After the iPhone was invented, many other companies such as Samsung borrowed the smartphone idea. The iPhone certainly swept away the phone industry. Now Steve Jobs is on a 6-month absence from Apple, but even today, Apple is coming up with newer products such as Apple TV, MacBook Air, and iPhone 3G. Steve Jobs has taken this small business to a multi-billion-dollar company. His work in NeXT Inc. rebounded him from defeat. His work at Pixar made Pixar an Academy Award, Golden Globe, and Grammy-winning computer animated studio. The products Apple has made, such as the Macintosh, the iPod, and the iPhone, certainly revolutionized America's market. Steve Jobs was not only a computer genius, but an expert marketer. He was definitely an individual that shaped the technology industry to become what it is today.
To let me in, shattered windows and the sound of drum.